Don't you wanna feel right again? Don't you wanna feel whole? Don't you wanna feel?
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. And I just want to make a little bit of a quick situation here. So I know it's been 3 months since I made the last How I Would Make video, but the main reason why it's been so long is simply due to the fact that I kinda sorta got way too busy trying to make the next episode. The next episode was supposed to be a how I would rewrite the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline, and I have rewritten the script and idea for that so many times that it has gotten to be just ridiculous as shit. Like, it is way too goddamn much effort, and I do still plan on releasing it, but I think it's best if I go ahead and get this one out, because working on that How I Would Make episode had basically affected this How I Would Make episode, which I planned on releasing literally a week ago. So let's just go ahead and get into this How I Would Make episode so I can go ahead and get this out on the actual day of Thanksgiving instead of me just prolonging the Five Nights at Freddy's one any longer and prolonging this one any longer and pushing back every other cool episode idea I have. Alright, so let's just go ahead and get into this. Again, just wanted to give a quick update. Oh, by the way, the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline video is still coming out, although it might come out around the 1st of December or maybe later this month. I really don't know. But don't worry, after that one comes out, you should be getting a string of How I Would Make episodes. And I do mean an actual string of them, because I've got so many ideas that I just gotta get out of this big-ass head of mine. So with all that being said, thank you all so much for watching. And remember, this is a podcast. You don't have to stick and watch everything. Just play it in the background while you play yourself some Spider-Man 2 or Ratchet & Clank or Devil May Cry 5. I haven't played that one yet, but I hear it's really good. It's definitely better than Devil May Cry 2 because everyone knows DMC2 fucking sucks. Yeah. What's up, my Republic of Heroes? Heart Hero 456, Exo65 here. And today, or at least by the time I'm releasing this, it will be a Thanksgiving. Oh, yes, I love me some Thanksgiving. You got your turkey, you got your ham, you got your yams, you got your beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes, corn, ketchup, baby, you name it. It's all delicious, it's all there, and it's all ready to be eaten by me. Because I may be a skinny motherfucker, but I eat like a fat man. Seriously. What was that line in the Garfield movie trailer? The eating you're about to witness is not going to be pretty. Yeah, that's me every Thanksgiving. I get my ass a whole ass turkey leg. I get me a fuck ton of some candy yams. I be shoving the mac and cheese down my throat. And for dessert, I eat a whole ass pumpkin pie. And yes, I eat that pumpkin pie like it is the last pumpkin pie on earth. Alright? There's only one other type of pie I eat like pumpkin pie. And that would be cherry pie, because I like me some cherries. But besides that, besides me constantly talking about Thanksgiving and how I can't wait to get my hand on them mashed potatoes and that savory, sweet, brown gravy, I will be making something very obvious. Because one of the things that I am very thankful for is none other than Sonic the Hedgehog. I know I've made tons of Sonic videos already, but I honestly want to be very obvious here when I say that this How I Would Make episode is also a bit of a response to something. For you see, the writer for the current Sonic the Hedgehog comics, and hopefully for the next few games, is none other than Ian Flynn. And he kind of made a bit of a statement on Twitter that kind of leads into this idea entirely. And that basically is, he stated that he personally believes that he needs to start making stories that remove the dimensional aspect of Blaze the Cat. And to that I say, Ian, It's Ian, my buddy, my friend. Can I call you Mr. Flynn? Mr. Flynn, can you just sit down right here for a second? Just sit down, calm down, and think for 5 minutes while I explain to you why that is not really the best idea. Because one of the best things about Sonic the Hedgehog, one of the greatest things about Sonic the Hedgehog, is the amount of potential for storytelling that the Sonic series still has. And removing that potential is utterly neutering the future stories that the Sonic series not only can have, but should have. Now, here's the thing. I do not inherently believe that the idea of removing the dimension aspect of the Sol dimension, like, I don't believe that type of story is inherently a bad idea. I think you can write a really good story of Blaze losing her dimension and possibly having her go through an amazing character arc of her learning to take care of her kingdom in an entirely new world. Obviously, going through an incredible story of loss, story of tragedy, and a story of learning how to appreciate the new family that she has within Sonic and all of her other friends. I think that would be an excellent story. That we get a cool story where Sonic goes back to the Sol dimension to help Blaze in an attempt to save her world, only for it to get absolutely annihilated. You know, actually, now that I think about it, that could be a really kick-ass story for the Sonic franchise. There's just one small problem. I don't think Sega is going to let you tell that kind of story. I don't think Sega is going to let you tell the kind of Sonic story that puts these characters through a lot of tragedy, through a lot of loss, and actively treats them like more of characters that aren't just constantly making references to the older games. Because, look, I think Sonic Frontiers was a good game. I think it's okay. But its story was a little bit wonky, and I might be making a future episode on how I read Riot. Jesus Christ. Yeah, a little iffy thing about podcast episodes. Since I'm freestyling most of this, you're going to be hearing me screw up my tongue a little bit. Sorry about that, Mr. Flynn, if you ever listen to this. Which I highly doubt. I don't even have 5,000 subscribers, so of course you're not going to listen to this. Ugh. But anyway, besides all of that, here's the thing. One of the things that I'm very thankful for isn't just the fact that the Sonic series has a lot of potential for future stories, but the fact that because that a potential is still unrealized, that the Sonic series is basically a gaping novel of empty pages that are just waiting to be written. And the Sol dimension should be at least a good amount of those chapters. Because the fact that you have an entire dimension at your disposal that you can literally do whatever you want with is phenomenal. You have an entirely new world where you can make up the rules, add in new characters, come up with entirely new concepts while building off of the very little concepts that has already been introduced for this place. Like, I don't understand how you haven't capitalized on this. Well, I do, because Sega can sometimes be, kind of assholes when dealing with, letting you and any other writer come up with actually potentially good ideas and executing them properly. Like, again, I don't fully blame the writers for why the Sonic series hasn't had that great of writing. I also feel like some higher up or some guy in a suit comes down and is like, no, you can't write that story. That's an intelligent story. We need to treat the kid characters in the Sonic franchise, we need to treat the kids in the Sonic franchise like they just got done reading Dr. Seuss. And I'm not talking about the good Dr. Seuss books. No, we're not talking about the Lorax. We're not talking about the Grinch. What Cat in the Hat? What is this crap? No, we're talking about Red Fish, Blue Fish. We're talking about the classics. The dog car party. I only really remember Dr. Seuss's good stuff. I only remember 2 of his real baby books. But even then, I feel you. I get why this would also be a very, a very difficult thing to really get through. But because it would be kind of difficult to really get through and, actually tell any interesting or big or fun stories with the Sol dimension, I got something cool for you. I got something interesting for you. to show you how thankful I am for the fact that the Sonic series has a fuck ton of potential, I want to give you some ideas. Now, I know legally you won't be able to really use these ideas, but maybe they can, maybe they can get the machinations of your mind. Maybe they can get them moving, get them gears turning. So you don't throw out the dimensional aspect of the Sol Dimension, and if you do, at least have the guts, have the cojones to tell some interesting and fun stories in the Sol Dimension before you make that decision. Because if you just tell a story where Blaze loses the Sol Dimension, even though us as Sonic fans barely got to spend any time there outside of Sonic Rush Adventure, then, unfortunately, well, let's just say most of us won't really care. It's kind of like introducing a new character we barely get to spend any time with and then killing them off. Like, it doesn't really matter to us because we didn't actually get to spend time with that character. You know? So, with all of that being said, let's get her started. This is how I would make a modern day Sol Dimension for Sonic the Hedgehog. Alright, all riggedy right. So, first things first, I want to get something out of the way. The world building. Yeah, when you have a new world, you gotta kind of, build that world. And here are a few interesting concepts I kind of have for the Sol Dimension in terms of its world. I'll get into some potential stories and concepts and character arcs and motivations and stuff for Blaze in a little second, but I want to talk about the world. I want to talk about where she live at. And a cool idea that I kind of have is that for a future Sonic story, Blaze truly does believe she is the princess of the entire Sol Dimension, but in reality, she's not. I'd like to introduce the concept that she is not the princess of the entire Sol Dimension, but instead is just the princess of a specific amount of it, believing that she is on a planet similar to Sonic's dimension, only for it to be hit with, only for her to be hit in the face, like steam-rolling truck hit in the face, that she is not on a planet, and that the entire Sol Dimension is really just on this big-ass ocean with islands on it. It is this flat land filled with ocean that's just floating in a void. Kind of like how our universe is, like a giant bubble in a void. Seriously, like, that is what our universe technically is. It's very existential. I try not to think about it, but basically, same thing here. It's just a bunch of islands. And the cool idea that I sort of have is that all of these islands are, like, kinda connected to each other, or many of them are connected to each other, because, like, when you dig straight down, you get this big tunnel, or at least big chunk of land that's connected to a huger, more larger chunk of land in the center, or, like, God, I wish I had a picture that I could sort of put up on screen to show you what I'm talking about. I might post something about it on my Twitter later, but the whole idea is basically that the entire Sol Dimension is pretty much just one big ocean filled with islands. And Blaze is only really ruling over a small amount of it. The Sol Dimension is pretty huge. It's an entire dimension. So imagine an ocean that takes up an entire universe. I mean, technically you kind of can, but imagine that more on a flat plane. Not so much a, not so much on a, smaller plane. With the sun and the moon literally just being two ginormous chunks of the dimension that just float. Like, take Egyptian mythology, for example. In Egyptian mythology, the world is just straight up flat. And the way the sun and moon work is that they literally go above, under, and above the entire flat world. That could be how the Sol Dimension works, in some way, shape, and form. Not only that, but I would also like to introduce the idea that Blaze isn't supposed to be the only guardian of the Sol Emeralds. Now, I could obviously just be taking this concept from the comics, But I like the idea of the Sol Emeralds and the Sol Dimension and everything dealing with Blaze the Cat. I kind of like the idea of all of that being a perfect antithesis to Sonic's Dimension, which I'm just going to call the Chaos Dimension because, you know, Sol Dimension, Sol Emeralds, Chaos Dimension, Chaos Emeralds. Like, I just think those naming conventions are really cool. And because of that, I want to introduce the idea that the Sol Emeralds really are just... they are like the only things keeping the Sol Dimension together. They are very useful and powerful, and if they leave that dimension, then the Sol Dimension is just destroyed. It is gonna be absolutely effed in the A. Like, that entire dimension will fall apart without the Emeralds. And because of that, they clearly have way more importance lore-wise to this world. So the idea I kind of have, or which might sound a little cliche, is that there were other kingdoms before Blaze's kingdom that took care of the Sol Emeralds and worked together to protect them. And something in the past led to all 7 of the Sol Emeralds being put in the possession of Blaze. Which leads me to a really cool idea for a potential Sonic story, where Blaze the Cat ends up learning about these other kingdoms and reaching out to them, only for some of these kingdoms to want to start war, many of the other kingdoms wanting to peacefully negotiate with her, and for her to get introduced to an entire team of characters who specifically want to become Guardians of the Sol Emeralds. Which actually leads me into how I want the Sol Emeralds to work. See, the Chaos Emeralds in Sonic obviously work very simplistically, but for those of you who don't know, let me explain. The Chaos Emeralds have this thing called Chaos Energy inside of them, and if you train with the Chaos Emeralds, or if you're just exposed to them for a while, you gain the ability to manipulate that Chaos Energy, which lets you sort of rewrite the universe, or, you know, manipulate time and space around you, control energy, and all that jazz. Basically, all the stuff Shadow and Sonic can do with it. When you have all 7 Chaos Emeralds, you can absorb them and gain a super form, which takes the powers and abilities you already have and gives you a few new ones while already enhancing the ones you got. The Super Sonic basically becomes way faster than the speed of light. He becomes basically invincible as long as he has power rings on him, and many of his already powerful moves and abilities become even stronger. Same thing with characters like Shadow, Silver, Tails, Knuckles, and hopefully one day Amy, because no Sonic Superstars does not count. Superpowers is not the same as a super form. I don't care what anybody says. When it comes down to it though, I personally believe that the Sol Emeralds can work similarly, except instead of them giving you new powers and abilities right off the bat, instead what they do is enhance a specific power that you already have. It's why Blaze becomes Burning Blaze and not Super Blaze, because she uses the Sol Emerald specifically to enhance her pyrokinesis into something stronger. Maybe Plasmakinesis, where she gains the ability to control plasma and not just fire. Which I know we could just say it's just way more powerful pyrokinesis, but I don't know, I just like the idea of her psychic powers getting stronger and her controlling something much more powerful. I think another example of how this could work would be Silver. I've always made it clear that Silver is by far the most underrated character in Sonic, simply because he's got a lot of potential for characterization, but because of one bad game, he's kind of just been ignored. Then my boy came in with the clutch during the Metal Virus arc, and he sliggity slam dunked. Dang it, though, that's not the phrase. Crap, what was the phrase again? Let me look at my papers, let me look on this desk. Here it is. And he didn't figgity fake the dunk on a sliggity slam dunk with that good old fashioned topaz. Damn it, I forgot the name of the topaz. I know it's called something, like, screw it. I screwed up the joke anyway. I'm moving on. Look, basically, Silver's the character that I think could actually be really good when it comes to being a perfect example of how this could work. Basically, if Silver ends up using the Sol Emeralds instead of the Chaos Emeralds, instead of becoming Super Silver, he could be something like, I don't know, Psychic Silver, or Enhanced Silver, or something like that. Basically, his psychic abilities can go from psychokinesis to something 10 times stronger, like ESP Silver, where he literally can control any and all forms of psychic abilities around him, or becomes such a powerful psychic that he's basically Professor Xavier on steroids. So, Onslaught, because that's basically what Onslaught from the X-Men comic books is. Professor Xavier on steroids. With a huge amount of weight, with a huge craving for murder. You know, something like that. And another little caveat that I want to add here is that unlike the Chaos Emeralds, I want to add that the Sol Emeralds either need something to be activated, like you got to put them in a gauntlet or a staff or a robot, or you just can't use them at all. As in, you need permission from the Guardian of the Sol Emeralds in order to properly use them, which can lead to me introducing a pretty cool concept for a future character. But the idea is pretty simple. The Sol Emeralds are a perfect antithesis to the Chaos Emeralds in every way. They've got some similarities, but they're very different. Instead of giving you their own energy, they simply enhance a power you already have. They've got their own energy that can be harnessed through some type of technology or some, I guess, mediator. I don't know what you would call something like the Infinity Gauntlet or a staff with a stone in it, but I usually just call that like a mediator or something. And, of course, from the most part, unlike the Chaos Emeralds, which, if they just disappeared from Sonic's world, the universe wouldn't be that affected, the Sol Emeralds are kind of, like, very essential for the survival of the Sol Dimension. And, of course, as I said, the Sol Dimension is a collection of islands with a huge ocean inside of it. And this, again, is an entire universe of oceans, meaning the kingdoms that would be introduced into new stories probably wouldn't be the only kingdoms in that dimension. Which actually leads me to the idea for the new Sol Dimension story. So you've got Blaze's kingdom. Very peaceful, very nice, very lovely, where she has all the Sol Emeralds. And after a while, Marine the Raccoon, her pirate best friend, ends up coming back after a huge, fantastic expedition. She ends up basically talking with Blaze about a bunch of treasure she found, and even mentions the fact that she's found other kingdoms out there and had almost gotten sunken because they have a very strict no pirates policy. But she was able to, make good with them after serving a little bit of time and helping out their kingdoms with some stuff. When Blaze hears about this, she's a little confused. She knew other kingdoms existed, but where Marine is describing these kingdoms exist seem to be way farther than she could ever possibly imagine. This is when Blaze finally realizes that there are other kingdoms farther than she believed, and her planet wasn't as small as she figured out. In fact, this would lead to her coming to a very big conclusion, that not only is her planet bigger, but that she's not on a planet at all. Instead, she's on an entire ocean. Her entire dimension is... Okay, now that I'm saying this out loud, I realize that this would kind of be stupid for Blaze not to know. And would be really ridiculous on her not to know. Which is why I set you all up for failure. Haha! You thought I was going to make this a story about Blaze learning about her dimension? Because, seriously, you really thought that she wouldn't know her home dimension is just a big-ass ocean with islands in it? No. See, the idea I have here is that Marine would end up revealing in this conversation that she may or may not have accidentally let it spill that Blaze's kingdom has the Sol Emeralds. Yeah, turns out the Sol Emeralds are very valuable. And the oceans surrounding Blaze's kingdom, or at least where her main castle is very secretive of where the Sol Emeralds are. And Marine, being a little dim-witted and not properly being told this beforehand, ended up letting know the other kingdoms that the Sol Emeralds are in Blaze's possession. Basically, the events of Sonic Rush Adventure happened in the waters of Blaze's kingdom, or at least close to where her kingdom was. So she was able to keep this on the down low while dealing with Eggman and Eggman Nega. But the idea here is that now that the other kingdoms know about it, some of them are going to try and make, different barters and bargains in an attempt to have their warriors become guardians of the Sol Emeralds as well, while other kingdoms are going to try and steal the Sol Emeralds, potentially leading to war. The idea I sort of have here is that we get introduced to a group of characters who have been training their entire lives to go around the world and find the Sol Emeralds. That they're basically a band of brothers who want to go out and help the world and find the mysterious Sol Emeralds and, well, make sure that the dimension is properly protected and safe. And of course, since none of the other kingdoms know that Blaze had the Sol Emeralds, it kind of ticks them off that she kept this a secret for them for so long. And yes, I'm going to be committing a cardinal sin by establishing that Blaze had parents. Oh my god. Yeah, I get the whole idea of many Sonic characters not having parents, but personally I never really understood why Sonic characters couldn't just straight up have parents. Like, sure, I get that's something that happened in the American comics, but honestly, it fits for characters like Blaze and maybe even Tails a lot more than you'd think. Seriously, like, the idea of Sonic characters having canonical parents in the games would work really well. And the idea of Blaze's parents possibly sacrificing themselves years prior to the events of Blaze's, well, not her birth, but years prior to her gaining control over the kingdom, would be a really good motivation for Blaze to keep the Sol Emerald thing a secret. I'd like to add in the idea that the reason the Sol Emeralds are in Blaze's possession is because years prior, a horrible cataclysmic event happened where, well, her father and mother, who were guardians of the Sol Emeralds, ended up trying to stop some big, horrifying, monstrous threat. And this big, horrifying, monstrous threat ended up kind of destroying and taking out the other guardians. Blaze's mother and father just barely managed to escape with the emeralds in tow, and believed that the Sol Emeralds getting into the hands of other people and other guardians was a bad thing. So they simply raised Blaze to believe that, well, the Sol Emeralds were better off hidden so that no one could get access to them, leaving Blaze, as she got older, as the only guardian of them. And of course, the whole story that I sort of have planned, or the idea that I sort of have for this new story, is that Blaze is going to be very mistrusting of all the other kingdoms. It isn't until this big, horrifying, ominous threat that her family ended up going up against threatens to come back, that she ends up deciding to rely on other people's help. Now, I know you're all probably asking one thing, and it's pretty obvious. Why not just call Sonic to help her? Well, here's the thing. I don't think there's a very feasible or easy way for Blaze to travel between her dimension and Sonic's dimension. There isn't really a full-fledged explanation for how she does it, but all that it's made clear is that the Sol Emeralds give her the ability to travel through dimensions. And since the Sol Emeralds are the antithesis to the Chaos Emerald, you could very easily just chalk this up to them having similar powers. Meaning, since the Chaos Emeralds give you the ability to teleport, manipulate time, and even freeze time temporarily, I'd say the Sol Emeralds can do similar or the same things, just to a much more extreme degree. Or maybe even a lesser degree. Or, you know, they have similar powers or something. Again, there isn't really a straightforward example of how strong the Sol Emeralds and Chaos Emeralds are when compared to each other. Which is why I believe Blaze isn't really going to try to call Sonic for this. The idea I sort of have here is that this is mostly going to be a Blaze solo story. And if Sonic does get involved, it's mostly going to be on accident. But it'll be Blaze taking the lessons she learned from, well, Sonic Rush and Sonic Rush Adventure about relying and trusting others to heart. Throughout this story, she's going to see that the kingdoms that want to be peaceful with her really do just want to know that their dimension is going to be properly protected. And Blaze is going to learn to trust these new animal characters with the ability to use the Sol Emeralds. And of course, the kingdoms that want to go to war, she's going to end up being able to calm their nerves with peace by simply establishing that she really does just want to keep the dimensions protected, and that she truly believes she was doing something helpful. The idea I sort of have here is that because Blaze has learned a lot about friendship and loyalty, she'll be able to use it to team up with these other kingdoms to fight this ominous threat. Which, before you guys ask what this big ominous threat is, I'm just gonna straight up say, is another version of Mephiles. Let me explain. So, it's made very clear that there's a really famous theory in the Sonic franchise that the Blaze from Sonic 06 is the same Blaze from Sonic Rush, and that she just got thrown into the events of 06 when trying to go back home at the end of Rush. And at the end of Sonic 06, or at least in Silver's story, she got teleported back to her home dimension because she literally told Silver to banish Iblis back into another dimension. Basically, the idea I sort of have here is that the time-traveling events of Sonic 06 could have eventually led to the timeline being somewhat rewritten, with Elise blowing Solaris out of existence, Blaze going back home with the future version of Iblis inside of her, might have caused some type of time misdirect or something, where a version of Mephiles would exist in her universe without the knowledge of Iblis. The concept I sort of have here is that this version of Mephiles would be this horrifying, ominous monster that would slowly be gaining consciousness and would try to and when the original Guardians of the Sol Emeralds tried using them to fight him, they would just barely be able to seal the creature away. Obviously, I wouldn't make it clear that this is a version of Mephiles in the beginning of my story. I'd make it a really cool twist when, after Blaze and all the characters believe they defeated him, that instead, he ends up having a much smaller form. A form that looks very similar to Shadow, but way more spiky, and way more purple. With the idea of this version of Mephiles potentially revealing the fact that Blaze's pyrokinesis is only this strong because she's got a monster inside of her. Leading us into the reveal that Iblis has been laying dormant inside of this version of Blaze. This is where I would bring someone like Silver in, where, again, the time-traveling shenanigans of this character would end up coming into a pretty cool time travel story, where Silver and Blaze have to hop timelines to figure out what the hell is going on. Or, heck, maybe Silver just has been time-traveling for so long that he's just seen similar events to the events of 06. I mean, Sonic Generations did confirm that Blaze saw Crisis City, so maybe the theory about Blaze actually having gone to the events of Sonic 06 and then back to Sonic Rush Adventure could just straight up be correct. At the end of the day, I do want to canonize this theory for this story to work, or for this new potential future story to work, because I do generally think it's a cool idea. The idea of Blaze knowing Iblis is inside of her, but not really knowing how it works. So she's just using her pyrokinesis like normal, and mostly trying to ignore it because she doesn't think anything's going to really happen, since nothing has happened. Heck, maybe we could even get a very similar situation to Naruto and the Nine-Tailed Fox, where she has to actually communicate with Iblis and work with it, becoming a more powerful version of herself because of it. Again, there's just a lot of cool things you could do here, and I believe that these stories being contained to Blaze's Sol dimension would be very important because, well, I really do just like the idea of other Sonic characters having their own things outside of Sonic. It's why I love the concept of a new Shadow the Hedgehog game, or even Silver getting his own game one day. Because at the end of the day, characters having their own big, epic adventures outside of the main character is a perfect way to give them more development and have them feel like they've got their own stuff going on. I would love to see Silver's future in a future Sonic game. I'd love to see the characters he knows there, the people that could be in his life in that future. And I'd like the same thing for for Blaze. Taking away the Sol dimension means you're destroying potential stories and ideas, and while these stories and ideas that I've already presented aren't the most well thought out, since, well, I'll just be real here, I kind of wrote a lot of these up very fastly, and I'm probably going to revisit this and come up with a more structured concept for a Blaze the Cat story. But overall, I genuinely do believe getting rid of the Sol dimension as a whole is a very bad thing. because it gets rid of the potential for new stories, the potential for new characters, the potential that you just haven't realized yet. Now, I know pitching my fanfiction ideas to you is probably not going to convince you to change your mind, but hopefully you do at least understand that since you have an entire dimension at your disposal, that you could at least do something fun or interesting with it, instead of just having all the events that happen to Blaze take place on Sonic's world. In fact, personally, I think you should be allowed to do a lot more with other characters like Shadow and Silver and whatnot, because, well, Sonic is a Paragon character. He's not really going to change that much. And I feel like with other characters that haven't really gotten their time to really shine or gotten much spotlight in the games, you could do a lot with them. And removing the dimensional aspect of the Sol dimension is just going to take away from the potential storytelling that you are more than capable of doing. And hell, if it isn't just me saying it, everyone on Twitter who's replied to that post has made it very clear that they don't like the idea of you getting rid of it either. And it's not because they just disagree with your opinion. It's because, as Sonic fans, we're thankful for the potential stories and concepts that the Sonic series has given us. We're thankful for the Sol dimension. And sure, we can keep it alive in our fanfictions and headcanons, but having it in the actual story just makes it feel all that much more special. We're thankful for the Sol dimension. And we'd be heartbroken if something ever happened to it. So yeah. Honestly, I probably could just rename this to not How I Would Make, but Why I'm Thankful for the Sol dimension. In fact, that's probably what the thumbnail is going to be called, but, you know, it's just something. Anyway, my name is HeartHero456. Thank you all so much for watching. And remember, everything I play, everything I sing, and everything I say, I do it for love. Bye, guys.